Okay, we're in the middle of Parak Tet. I say, I believe the second longest parak. We have another few weeks on this, and we're discussing different I don't say levels, but different forms of Yira Shamayim. And when it comes to Yira Shamayim, so we're up to one that's probably the most difficult. I'll explain in a second, but probably there's something that seems like almost the furthest stretch for what we think about Yira Shamayim, because up until now we were thinking about like embarrassment for Hashem, trepidation before Hashem, and here we're going to speak about kavod, honoring Hashem. You think like Yira and kavod, they don't seem like they work together, but when we think about Yira Shamayim, it's not just about literal fear, but it's about, and it's defined also as awe, right? To recognize the awesomeness of Hashem. And when it comes to recognizing how awesome, in a certain sense, it's literal term, when you think of the awe of Hashem and what Hashem's capabilities are and his abilities, then it makes us honor him and recognize how great he is, to give him honor. And that's kind of the connection. So he says, B'nei dibarnu adata, mina achna, mina boshes. We spoke about the submissiveness, maybe submissive towards Hashem. And we spoke about embarrassment towards Hashem. Now let's speak about kavod. It says, Hine, kavod a mitzvah v'ikar. We're going to spend the rest of the night discussing this idea of kavod. V'nei kavod mitzvah v'ikara. When it comes to beautifying a mitzvah, making it precious, kvar is hirunu alav chachmen zechron nevrachah. They've told us about this. Zeh kelev yamvei, right? Said famously in Az Yashir. It's the source for hiddur mitzvah, beautifying a mitzvah. This is my God, and I shall glorify him. It's na'el lefanav by mitzvos. Says the Gemara Nazir, says that we should beautify Hashem when it comes to serving Hashem with our mitzvos. Tzitzis na'ah, should have beautiful pair of tzitzis. Tefillin na'ah, should get the most mehudar set of tefillin. Sefer Torah na'ah, to make sure to get a Sefer Torah where it's a beautiful ksav and a beautiful cloth, to give a nice ornament and crown for the Torah. Lulav na'ah b'chula, and you get a nice set of arba minim. And the Chayin Amru, it says in Baba Kama, the hiddur mitzvah ad shlish. When it comes to spending money on a hiddur mitzvah, you could go up until a third. So this does not mean that you could spend a third of your money to perform this mitzvah in its hiddur way. But what it means is as follows. This is quoted actually in the Shulchan Aruch, in Tuf Reish Nun Vav, and the Mishnah Berurah there explains this, that if you have two options of, let's say, esrogim, and one esrog is $50, the other esrog is $60. So it says halacha, you could go ad shlish. You should do ad shlish. If it's less than a third more, then you should get that one, right? So if it was $50 and $100, that's double the amount. Then you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. But within a third, and the Gemara says ad kan mishalo, that like that's your doing, and if you spend the extra money, mikan ve'elch mishalo kodesh baruch hu Hashem, don't worry, Hashem's going to take care of the rest, right? So Hashem's going to pay us back. Don't worry about that extra money. And I saw it's mentioned in the Mishnah Berurah though that if a person's very wealthy, one opinion says if a person's very wealthy, this doesn't apply. So, like you should always go above it. You should go above a third when you have different options if you're able to afford it. But certainly we see here the source and the basics for beautifying our mitzvos. It's interesting to note that in all these examples, we're going to see a difference, like something different soon. So just know that in these examples, it's all literally the mitzvah itself, the object that which you're performing the mitzvah with, right? So you're going to shake the lulav and esrog, buy a nice lulav and esrog. You're going to wear tefillin, buy a nice tefillin. It doesn't mention here about ancillary parts or things that encase it. We'll get to that soon. Just interesting to point out. It says, "Hare das sivso sehem zachron levracha bar milelu she'ein dai v'asos mitzvah levad." That the Chachamim say that it's not enough just to perform the mitzvah itself. You might think, what is that? Hashem cares like shekel of an esrog. It doesn't matter what it's like as long as it's kosher, right? So it's not just about the mitzvah. You have to show honor to it. You have to show hitter. You should beautify it. You should go above and beyond in that way. Of course, it's important to, I guess, just to state that, realize that we're dealing, the whole chapter is about Hasidus. Hasidus, we're discussing like certain form of perfection of our avodas Hashem in terms of our mitzvos and our midos. Just important to think about, right? Because if this was a much earlier chapter, it would just be like, do the mitzvos, right? Stay away from sins. Perform the mitzvos. Perform them in their details, right? Do the shake lulav and esrog. Make sure that you fulfill. Make sure the lulav is perfect and fulfills the shitos. All right, so we're past that, saying no. Of course, you're performing the mitzvah, but beautify, make it hidden, right? And their sources for this is obviously this is a hotzi mishal hakel al atmo, and this comes to kind of not exclude, but what's the word? Let me see what he defines here. This comes to, I guess, dispel the notion of a person who says, like people who want to get something nice, like who are they fooling? Like, you think Hashem cares about others? Hashem doesn't care about your materialism. Like, why should someone think to do this? This doesn't make any sense. It says, Kihu miroma midvar ma'ila, Hashem is exalted far and above and beyond this physicality. And when a person's performing the mitzvah as it should be, making sure it's kosher, that's enough. You think Hashem cares that you have silver lining on your tzitzis, on your talis? You think Hashem cares that that your esrog is immaculate instead of just being kosher? Hashem doesn't care about that. You don't spend money on these types of things. So he says, the Ramchal says, that person is wrong. We should not take into consideration what this person's saying. And interesting, he discusses here in the footnote that this type of person will rationalize it that way, but really deep down, it's all because he doesn't want to spend the money. Right? It's interesting. Right? So the real reason is the person doesn't want to spend an extra $20, but the person will say, I don't want to. I want to get this type of lulav because you think Hashem cares about the materialism? Of course not. He doesn't care if my menorah is this amount or this amount. So it's just important. I heard a similar. I mean, a story to is not what I said. That was not a story. I mean, making it a person saying about this lulav and esrog, but I heard an actual story that a person went to the stipler, and a person, let's say, was advised to go undergo a certain procedure. Maybe he had to be under, maybe he needed anesthesia, it would be painful. And he went to the stipler, and he said to the stipler, like, Rabbi, like, kind of like, what should I do? I assume I shouldn't get this procedure because I should have emun, and I should have bitachon in Hashem that everything's going to be okay. And the stipler said to him, no, you're a fool. You're actually just scared. And you're saying, oh, I'll have bitachon Hashem, things are going to be okay. But really, it's because you just don't want to undergo this procedure. Over here, too, a person who says, I don't need to get this fancy thing. Hashem doesn't care about materialism. Really, it's just your lack of desire to get something that is more expensive for the sake of Hashem. He says, he continues. I'm up here still. Okay, so that, yeah, sorry. Amnam. Ha'emes hu. In reality, the truth is, Sha'adam Baruch Hu Nikra Kel HaKavod. Until the Melech refers to Hashem as God of glory, God of honor. Meaning that is, we should recognize Hashem through the prism of Kavod. And we are therefore obligated to honor Hashem. Even though it's true, Hashem doesn't need our Kavod. Not only that, Hashem doesn't even care, meaning in a certain sense. Yeah, does Hashem need a nice love? Does it even matter? Of course not. But at the same time, the Ramchal explains, actually in Derech Hashem's other sefer, that explains a more esoteric idea, that Hashem chose to kind of lower himself. So for us to kind of view him as a Melech Basar V'Dam. When you have a king, a human king, and you want to go to them and you want to speak to them or serve them, you have to serve them on the nicest things you have. You have to wear your nice suit and tie. You have to give them the nicest present. But when it comes to Hashem, Hashem doesn't need that. So Hashem lowered himself, where we view Hashem like that in order for our voda, because we will actually be better in terms of our service of Hashem and connecting to Hashem if we're able to honor him. And Rabbi Rucham Levavitz, quoted here in my footnote, Rucham Levavitz says that that's the whole notion behind. It's brought here two different examples. One is kibbud av v'em, that the reason why a child should serve the parent is not that the parent needs our kavod, but actually is for the child to learn to have greater respect and appreciation for the parent by honoring them. And the second example he gives is our honor and respect for Torah, right? You see a sefer on the floor, pick it up. You can't put a sefer on the floor, right? To make sure to not touch the parchment, to not touch the cloth of the Torah, to be extra careful. All that is not for the sake of this inanimate object, but it's for our sake, in order to make the Torah more chashuv in our eyes. And so too, that's what it is here. The honor is for us to recognize how great Hashem is and to give us the proper mentality of appreciation and yira. That's why it's in the chapter, a certain yira for who Hashem is. It says, and if a person is gonna, cut the corners when it comes to their ability to what they could beautify, it says, Eno elachota, says you're a sinner. Huma, after this paragraph, I'll say something. Huma, I'm saying a lot of things right now, if you know what I mean. Huma sha'navi malachi Mitzrayim al Yisrael v'dvar Hashem. This is what the Navi Malachi said to Bnei Yisrael, B'chisa gishun iber lizbach ein ra. If you're going to offer like an animal on the mizbeach that's blind, is there nothing wrong with that? B'chisa gishu pisech v'cholta ein ra. If you offer a lame or a sick animal on Mizbeach as a korban, is there nothing wrong with that, right? You're going to give that to Hashem. Would you go to like your governor, your president, your king? Would you give them something like that as a gift? They'd mamish kill you, right? Or you're going to give me an animal that's blind, an animal that has a bum? You do that. So imagine, this is how you're going to treat Hashem. So one thing I'm going to say is that maybe throughout Jewish history, right, where people didn't have so much money, it was obviously they're able to spend what they could and they tried their best, but they literally just didn't even have the funds. So it's just like, I was just thinking, thinking out loud. Feel free to respond if you like. But the fact that we do have much more money, obviously, like, meaning everything is expensive, and we have your apartment rent, or your mortgage, or Shiva tuition, or whatever it may be, right? But do we have other money that we could use? Yeah. So I think it's about, I guess, a certain balance of like being realistic. So let's say the esrog example. The example I gave was like something that's $50 and $60, and that's true. But sometimes you might go to a place and there's $40 and $60 and $80 and $100 and $150. So like, yeah, when you have two esrogim, that's how you can make the example. What if you have so many there? Are we mechuyev to get the most expensive one? So certainly it's a nice mitzvah, and it's a greater hider mitzvah to buy the most expensive. I don't know if a person is mechuyev to buy the most expensive one. Just just think out loud. I guess to do our best to recognize our ability to do hiddur mitzvah, perform a hiddur mitzvah, to try to certainly not mentally to say like, I don't need to do much. Hashem doesn't care. But to be realistic in our spending, but to recognize the amazing ability for hiddur mitzvah and to do, I guess, what we can in a realistic sense. I don't know if every year you have to go and buy the most expensive esrog you have because it's right there. And yeah, technically I could afford $200. Afford that. It's great to do. I'm not saying not, but I'm not saying you should feel necessarily mechuyev to have to get that one. It says v'ulam chachmei zachron lebracha is hirunu lisnahig hefech zeh b'avoda. So he says that we have to conduct ourselves, meaning this is the previous line was like, are you going to go to your official and give him something that's like has a mum? It says Chazal teach us the opposite. The Amr, it says in Sukkah daf nun amud al inyan mayim she'eskalu shlisaninu misnenes. That concept of mayim gilulim, that when they had water that was uncovered, so lacha was you weren't allowed to drink it. It was kept without supervision because it could be that a snake went up there, drank some of it, and left its venom there. And if a person were to drink it, they would die. So there was a way to remove the venom through straining the water. Apparently the venom would come out, maybe it's obviously thicker than water, I guess, somehow. And they're able to strain the water to now be able to use it. Even when it comes to this, that even though a person shouldn't try to strain it, so he says, mitam imur de amar lehedyot, meaning even though, let's say there's a permissibility to use the strainer, so that's fine. But when it comes to the nisa chamayim, pouring water on the mizbeach, you cannot use that water. So even though that water is okay for a human being, the fact that snake venom went in it, how could you use that for the mizbeach? Is that not violating this idea? Would you give that to your king? Would you give that to the official? Don't you see what's lacking in your observance of the mitzvah if you serve Hashem with that type of water? And nonetheless, it was actually permitted for the average person to drink. And he says there are other isurim that are mentioned that are not allowed for the gavoh is referring like for the mizbeach, for Beis Hamikdash, but they for Hashem, who's above the gavoh, but they are allowed for the people. Why? What's the reason they're not allowed? They're covered. It's not covered for Hashem. V'amar o b'sifri. It says in Sifri and V'amar Beis Yudal. V'chol mivchar nidrechem. When it comes to the korbanos that you made a neder to bring, korban nedava, so you should bring your best, the bachar, the one that's the choicest. I believe the English translation that they tend to give on this word. The hainu shlev the element of bachar. Should give from your best. Give from your best. And it's interesting here. There's interesting footnotes that maybe I'll explain this footnote. We have a little bit more here, and then we'll stop. That when it comes to this, we already had a source for hiddur mitzvah, right? Zekir v'amveyu, and we have to beautify the mitzvahs. So what is this coming to add? Kol mivchar nidrechem. So it says that this is coming to add, this new concept teaches that if a person owns material of varying quality, right? So you have different types of suits. It says he should choose the best one for his service of Hashem. Make sure to wear that when it comes to going to shul. You have whatever it may be, each thing. You have different types of cups. Make sure the best cup is used for kiddush. That's the source here. And the Rambam elaborates on this, adding that also obligates a person to use higher quality material for the service of Hashem than he uses for his personal needs. So in the Rambam's examples, and I'll share a story that I quote here right after. When anything is done for the sake of Hashem, you should use the best. And he says his examples: if a person builds a shul, it should be more beautiful than if you build your home. So the way you're going to do is the even nicer. And if a person means, so it's not just, until now, it's like, yeah, build a nice shul. It's like, no, you have to build a nicer shul than you would even build. If you're going to make a suit, get a suit, make sure the suit is even nicer than a suit that you wouldn't wear that's not for the sake of Hashem. He gives another example. If he feeds the poor, he should feed them from the best. And if he clothes someone who's naked, someone who doesn't have clothes, he should clothe them with the finest of his clothing. And there's a story here that Rav Shalom Shodron, that he once came back from Eretz Israel after going on a trip to England. And he was in England and he saw a beautiful shirt. And he said, let me buy the shirt and I'll save it, right? I'll save it for the Chag. And a few months from now, when I have the Chag, I'm not sure what Chag it was, it's whichever Chag it was, a few months from now, that's when I'm going to wear it. And it was Mamish Erev Chag. It was the day before the holiday. And all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door, and there's a poor man. There's an ani who says, Mamish, I have nothing. I have nothing for the Chag. You please help me out. And he didn't have much money. And he went and he brought over the shirt and he actually kept it in the wrapping. He took out the shirt and showed him the shirt and then put it back in the wrapping and gave it over to him to show him that Mamish never wore this shirt. Mamish, a brand new, beautiful shirt. It says, here, I want you to have it. Close the door and he leaves. And Shalom Shodron turns back around and his children see him. And his child asks, Abba, Tati, whatever they call them, why do you do that? You bought that shirt months ago just for this occasion, just to wear tonight on the Yom Tov. Why do you give it away? He says, come with me. He goes over and he walks to the bookshelf and he takes out the Rambam that I just quoted you. He starts reading that line. It's like excited. Look, you realize what I just fulfilled? Rambam says his example is if someone is unclothed, then you Mamish, should clothe him with the best clothing that you have. This is the best I have. This is what I'm able to help the person with. And so it's an important thing in terms of Hiddur Mitzvah, very important Inyan. And Be'ezras Hashem, we're actually still going to be continuing in this next week as we move forward. Okay. So Chevra, Ishkoch, and Be'ezras Hashem, I'll see you next week.